I was very open at this point when I found one of your videos, and it resonated so immediately. And I remember thinking, I wish I had found this like 4 or 5 years ago, like right when I started struggling. I wish I could have found this. How come I didn't see anything on this? And then immediately I realized if I had stumbled on that exact same video, let's say 6 months in, maybe even a year in, I'm not sure I would have been open to it. I don't know if it would have resonated the same way, because I remember how convinced I was at the beginning that it was certain things, and how deeply I needed to investigate that and rule that out for myself.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a really special Insomnia Insight episode. Welcome back, Michelle.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
It's super nice. I've been looking forward to talking about the investigative phase with you, and I'll share kind of a little backstory with everyone about that. But first and foremost, it's really special doing this with you, because you remember in the olden days, like 2 years ago, we would have ample time. We would just like talk all the time. Now I feel like I haven't spoken with you in a while, but so it's kind of extra nice to chat with you.
I know it was a nice excuse to sort of check in. Yeah, back in the good old days, right? When things were so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it's true. That's so true.
And other than that, before we kind of jump into our topic, how are things with Hopeful Mind?
Good. Everything is going really well. I'm coaching a lot. I have just the most wonderful clients. Like, I'm very, very lucky. Feel very grateful. It's
It's
good.
amazing.
Yeah.
Super nice. All right. Well, so the little short backstory is I think we were on this Zoom call that we do every other week with like all the coaches, kind of just checking
Yeah.
with everyone. And we were talking about how sometimes we have students that aren't really seeing things get easier for them at maybe the pace they want or whatnot. And you mentioned in passing something that really struck me. You said like, sometimes you have clients that are in the investigative stage.
Yeah.
And I kind of immediately saw the value of it. Like I knew what you meant, and I knew how this could be practical for the student and for us as well. But tell us, what this means and where does this come from? The idea of the investigative stage.
Yeah. So the investigative stage is something that everybody goes through when they start struggling with insomnia. And what I was referring to is just that stage where you are actively seeking answers as to what is causing your insomnia. And you're very likely viewing it through the lens of this being some kind of physical ailment, disease, like something at that level. And so what that looks like for so many of us, including myself, is going to doctor to doctor to doctor. You're going through every single practitioner you can possibly find. You're getting maybe all the different tests you can. You're just trying everything, and you're really just actively, almost, I would say desperately, sometimes obsessively searching for the answer of what is broken in me, what is wrong in my body or in my brain, that is driving this insomnia? What is the thing I need to fix? Um, and that's, I think, something we all go through, and it's normal. And I think one thing too, Daniel, is that I think it's also an important phase for people to go through. It's necessary, because that process, even though I'm making it sound like, oh, we're going to doctor, almost like it's unhelpful, but really, I can't think of a better instinct when something suddenly changes in your life or your health than to go to your doctor, or to go to a second opinion, or things like that. So I think it's actually the best thing to start with, because ultimately you do want to rule out any underlying physical issue that you could be having. So it is a really helpful, there's a lot of value to the investigative stage. And I think the only kind of tricky part or challenging part can be when we're not really, we are continually getting a clean bill of health. We're continually told you're okay, everything's okay, you don't have this, you don't have that, and we're ruling everything out continuously. But we are still in that phase. In my case, I would say I was in the investigative stage for almost 4 years. That's a really long time to be seeing doctors and practitioners, and to be, you know, perfecting my supplement stacks and all the rest of it. And so you're just constantly trying to look under every rock that you could possibly find. Because I know, like in my case, and like so many other people, I was convinced there must be something physically broken in my body or in my brain, right? This must be neurological. Maybe I have Parkinson's. Maybe it's this, like all of these types of things. And so, on the one hand, while it's really helpful place to start because we want to rule things out, that's always helpful because then that frees us up to be able to look at all of this through the lens of fear and anxiety. The challenging part is when it's really been going on for quite a while because it can keep us in a state of fear and a state of constant stress and control at the same
Yeah.
time. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's very well, you described it so well, and, I wanted to ask you the following: what is a potential kind of challenge for both, in a sense, the coach and the student when, the student starts to work with you as a coach, and they're in the investigative state or stage?
Yeah. From the coach perspective, you can kind of see based on what the person is communicating that they're still in this stage. And a lot of the times, if a person is coming to you, they're probably not fully in the investigative stage anymore, because otherwise they may not be talking to you or seeking this kind of help, because they know by the time they're talking to us that we're really viewing this through the lens of fear and anxiety. So they're at least open to that, which is really helpful. But you can see that it's almost like there's like one foot in, one foot out, sort of, and which is normal and completely okay. And I would say as a coach, it's not problematic. It's just allowing the person to be in that stage as long as they need to be in that stage. And because everybody will need to go through that phase in at their own pace, whatever that might be, and rule out whatever symptom or concern they need to rule out. And so I would say people can do a lot of really helpful learning and being open to so many things, even while they're still one foot into that stage. I think if there's 2 feet in and you're fully into the investigative stage, you're likely not at a point where you're seeking coaching out. So I've never really seen that. And then from maybe the client's perspective, I would say that, again, assuming everything's ruled out, there's no physical problems happening. Insomnia recovery really begins when the investigative stage ends.
Right, right, yeah, so well said. And, when I heard you talk about this, the investigative stage, uh, I had like a couple of students that just came to my mind, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is exactly what was happening." This student was, you know, um, not like 100% in the investigative stage, but we're quite, quite positioned in that stage. And as you said, that is somewhat rare because most of the people that work with us, they have gone through, maybe our social media, read books and stuff, so they kind of know. But sometimes you have a student that is, you know maybe like 2 foot in the investigative stage and 1 foot in kind of like where we're at, and that can of course be challenging. The way I found it challenging with a particularly one person I remember is that they would, you know in calls and in communication, they would say like, "Oh, well, this was helpful to learn this. On the other hand, I just met a new doctor and they're now looking into like my GI stuff. So now I'm going to have two endoscopies and I'm going to see a third doctor." And
Yeah.
it was tricky because on one hand they were learning, it was helpful, but on the other hand they were also pulled in other directions where they were kind of like, doing a lot of research and investigation, right? So uh, why I thought like what you shared here about kind of coining this the investigative stage, I imagine myself having known that and having had that wording, I could have said like, you know what, this is very common. You are in what we call the investigative stage. And the beautiful thing there is that it normalizes it, and the person sees like, okay, yeah, that's true. I'm doing a lot of investigation, not necessarily saying like, oh, you have to stop that, but rather, as you said, saying that this is also valuable. But I think that sometimes it is tricky when you're sort of like pursuing two different directions simultaneously, something like that. What do you think about this, Michelle?
Yeah, it can be. I get that. It can feel tricky for the person going through it and for the coach to navigate. I completely understand that. And then I think back to my own experience of being in that stage for so long. And I remember one of the thoughts I had really early on after finding the first video that I stumbled on from you. And, I had, again, been in my investigative stage for well over 4 years by that point. I think I found even after that. So I had already sort of given up on that. I was very open at this point when I found one of your videos, and it resonated so immediately. And I remember thinking, I wish I had found this like 4 or 5 years ago, like what, right when I started struggling. I wish I could have found this. How come I didn't see anything on this? And then immediately I realized if I had stumbled on that exact same video, let's say 6 months in, maybe even a year in, I'm not sure I would have been open to it. I don't know if it would have resonated the same way because I remember how convinced I was at the beginning that it was certain things and how deeply I needed to investigate that and rule that out for myself. So it's that as well, remembering, well, wait, maybe you would have actually not even listened to the video at that stage, or you would have heard it and dismissed it, thinking, there's no way this is fear and anxiety. There's no, it can't be, it's too intense, or something like that. I may have made an excuse for why it couldn't be.
Yeah.
Um, so in a way, that's why I was saying I think everybody goes through this phase, and everybody needs to go through that phase at their own pace, whatever that might be. And ultimately, that's going to be the thing that either they find something physical, which is very rare from working with so many people, right? But again, that can happen. We can have something going on where it's creating a disruption, a sleep disruption, and you know but the more often cases, just they see that things are rolled out, and then that's the thing that creates more openness
Yeah.
to now viewing this from the lens of fear, and which changes how you approach things so dramatically.
Yeah.
But I think, let's say, rushing that phase for somebody or for themselves isn't helpful. It's going to
Exactly.
lead to the same place. So even though yes, it can be tricky a little bit, um, the best way is just to allow that phase to be there, and for a person to allow themselves to rule out and investigate whatever they feel is important to
Yeah, 100%.
them.
And uh, uh, for people who haven't read this particular newsletter, I send out a newsletter for those who are signed up to people who are interested in becoming coaches or already are coaches.
Mm.
And today I was so inspired by this investigative stage that I sent the newsletter out about it. But did you read it in full, or you just saw it was
I
there?
saw it and I thought, "Oh, okay, that's fun." Yeah, right before this, I saw that
Oh
it.
my gosh, you gotta go back and read it because it's so incredible because you're making all the, like, points I made while I was sitting pondering and wrote that, you're making all those points, it's incredible. And one of the points I made was, like, it can sound by the way we're talking about this topic, it can sound like the investigative stage inevitably leads to you realizing that this was all driven by anxiety.
Yeah,
And in our context, I mean, in one way that is true because we look at insomnia by definition as a process of, driven by anxiety, right? But there may certainly be some people who kind of come across kind of our channel, our work very early on, and they actually have a sleep disruption. They just they have sleep apnea or something like that. And in that case, the investigative stage can end when
yeah.
they find out that they have sleep apnea. That's another way it can end, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that does happen sometimes.
Yeah.
And right, and that's part of the value of being of going through that phase
Yeah.
is exactly that. And one thing that came to mind as you were mentioning this is you're saying some of the challenges for coaches. I think one of the great parts about, let's say, coaching somebody who might even be 2 feet into the investigative stage is still providing the education around the experience and how the symptoms that they're having, because this can often be the thing that keeps people really searching in that phase, is they're having certain symptoms that they don't believe could possibly be related to anxiety, and they don't know that these symptoms are normal for anxiety and for this insomnia experience. And so, even just learning, like, oh, wait a minute, these twitches, these jerks, I'm having derealization, whatever it might be, just learning that that's a normal part of anxiety, of this whole insomnia experience, can actually help people navigate their own investigative stage.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
very, very well said. Now I sort of know what you probably will answer to how you'll answer the question based on what we chatted about just before starting to record. But do you have any idea of when you started to refer to this as the investigative stage, or where that expression came from?
No idea. No. Could be years now, Daniel. Could be
Yeah, yeah,
years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, which makes me like, it makes me think like how much more is there that Michelle knows or Alina knows or everyone else knows that I don't know about. I want to learn all these things. We have to come up with a way
Boundless.
of sharing it.
So many things.
But
That's
yeah, I think this is incredible. I think for me personally, yeah, it's been really, really valuable to learn about this investigative, like the terminology, and think of it as a specific stage that everyone goes through, etc. Really, really valuable. So I'll just say thanks, Michelle, for sharing it with us. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and look forward to having you back hopefully pretty soon, Michelle.
yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. Bye, everyone. They say that the best things in life are free. And I truly hope that this free video helps you rediscover something else that is free, which is peaceful sleep. If you do find our content here helpful, then please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share it with people, because the more views we get, the more people we reach, the more chances of changing lives we have. The thing is, leaving insomnia for good is actually so simple. You can and will rediscover a beautiful life at the end of this sleepless tunnel. So yes, please share it with people, hit the subscribe button, and you will be a big part of leading the change that we so want to see in the sleep universe. Thank you.